Masters of Business Administration, and this session is for Research Methodology for Management Decisions, that is MMPC 15. We will be continuing with where we left in the last session. We were talking about research problems. Now, moving further, we will be taking this research problem as hypothesis testing. It is often convenient to structure a research problem in terms of a hypothesis to be tested. The hypothesis must be agreed upon by both the manager and the researcher, although the formal statement is primarily the responsibility of the researcher. In this use of the word, a hypothesis is simply a statement about the universe. It may or may not be true. The research is designed to ascertain the truth. Now, we consider the following pair of hypotheses. We denote it by H naught, which states here at least 10% of the viewing audience for children's TV show consists of adults. On the other side, that is the alternate one is H1, which is less than 10% of the viewing audience for children's TV show consists of adults. Now, in the first case, it should be noted that these hypotheses are worded in such a way that either one or the other is correct. They cannot both be correct and they cannot both be incorrect. Secondly, in order for these two hypotheses to be useful in a research decision making situation, the decision maker should choose first acted the first is true, and the second act if the second act is true. Both statements are characteristics of all situations in which a research problem is properly structured in terms of hypothesis testing. Set now, setting up of hypothesis. Once the extensive review of literatures has been done, the researcher's next step is to state the working hypothesis in clear words. It is a tentative assumption which is made to draw out and test its logical consequences. Hypotheses should be drawn in a correct manner so that the conclusion can be drawn effectively. It also affects the manner in which the tests are conducted for analysis and further collection of data for further study. Working hypothesis plays a vital role in the development of research work. It should be specific and short, as the same has to be tested. Now, hypothesis. What does this word hypothesis means? Hypothesis is an assertion, or an idea about a phenomena, relationship, or situation, the reality or truth of which you do not know. A hypothesis is a tentative conclusion logically drawn. The research work is conducted to test the truth of this hypothesis. Hypothesis also indicates the type of data required and the type of methods to be used in the research work. It also increases the thinking power and more attention is paid on the problem analysis. What are the criteria to be kept in mind while developing a working hypothesis? To start with, a discussion with colleagues and experts about the problem, its origin, and the objectives in seeking a solution. Secondly, examination of data and records, if available, concerning the problem for possible trends, peculiarities, and other informations. Thirdly, review of similar studies in the area or of the studies on the similar problem. And fourthly, exploratory personal investigation, which involves original field interviews on a limited scale, keeping in mind the practical aspect of the problem. As the general rule, specification of working hypothesis is another basic step of the research process in most research problems, especially in the case of exploratory or formulative researches, which do not aim at testing the hypothesis. We may encounter a problem where we do not need working hypothesis. Extensive literature review. Once the above setup is defined, the next step in the review of literatures available so that the researcher get himself acquainted with the selected problem. Two types of literatures are used. The conceptual literature concerning the concepts and theories. And the other one is the empirical literature consisting of studies made earlier which are similar to the one proposed. By going through the previous work, researchers will be having a knowledge related data and the other material for the operational purpose, which will help the researcher in moving further with a meaningful version. For this part, a good library has to be identified where one can get the following: the abstracting and indexing journals and published or unpublished biographies, academic journals, conference proceedings, government reports, books, etc. All these resources are to be studied very carefully. Now, preparing the research design, including a sample design. Once the research problem has been formulated, the next step to be followed is the development or formulation of research design. Here, the researcher has to state the conceptual structure within which the study will be performed. This facilitates the researcher in getting the required information. With minimum expenditure of effort, time, and money, the collection of data is performed. All these factors depends upon the research purpose. Research purposes may be grouped into four categories. For example, it can be exploratory, or it is exploration, description, diagnosis, and experimentation. There are several research designs, such as experimental and non-experimental hypothesis testing. Depending upon the choice of the researcher's selection of the design has to be done from experimental design, can be either informal design, for example, before and after without control, after only with control, before and after with control, or formal designs. For example, completely randomized design, randomized block design, Latin square design, simple and complex factorial designs. Later on, we will be talking about all these terminologies. For the preparation of research design, following key points need to be kept in mind: the means of obtaining the information, the availability and skills of the researcher and his staff, if any, explanation of the way in which selected means of obtaining information will be organized, and the reasoning leading to a selection, the time available for research, and the cost factor relating to research, that is, the finance available for the purpose. Now, how research is done. We will be talking about different methods. Research methods are the strategies, processes, or techniques utilized in the collection of data or evidence for analysis in order to uncover new information or create better understanding of a topic. There are different types of research methods which use different tools for data collection. We start with survey method. As the name suggests, survey is a fact-finding study. In this process, the data is collected directly from the population or a sample at a time. Basic requirement is an expert and imaginative planning, careful analysis, and rational interpretation of the study. Data can be collected by observation, phone, mailing questionnaire, or by interview. As per the objectives of the study, the collected data can be analyzed by simple or complex statistical techniques. Here, the approach of working can be direct approach, such as researchers ask a direct question about the behavior and thoughts. For example, why don't you eat amul butter? In direct approach, the researcher may ask, what kind of people use amul butter? The advantage of this method is that the researcher may collect different kind of information, and here the cost is low and the data collection is quick as compared to observation and experimental methods. Second part is case study. Case study is a method of exploring and analyzing the life of a social unit. The social unit may be a person or a family, or an institution, or an organization, or even a community. It is a method of collecting information and its analysis. It is a way of organizing social data so as to preserve the unitary character of the social object being studied. The case study method is a widely used systematic field research technique. Anthropologists, historians, novelists, and dramatists have used this method concerning problems pertaining to their areas of interest. Even management experts use case study methods for getting clues to several management problems. Major phases involved are diagnosis and identification of causal factor as a basis for remedial or developmental treatment, application of remedial measures, that is, treatment and therapy, follow-up program of to determine effectiveness of the treatment applied, etc. Field studies. These are scientific inquiries aimed at discovering the relations between psychological, sociological, and educational variables in social institutes or actual situations like factories, colleges, organizations, etc. Here, the relations between attitude, value, perception, and behavior in a particular conditions are selected and studied. Scientific method. Carl Pearson writes, the scientific method is one and same in all branches of science, and that method is the method of all logically trained minds. The unity of sciences consists alone in its methods, not its material. The man who classifies fact of any kind, whatever, who sees their mutual relation and describes their sequences, is applying the scientific method and is a man of science. Scientific method is the pursuit of truth as determined by logical considerations. Scientific method is based on certain basic postulates such as it depends on empirical evidences. It uses relevant concepts committed to only objective considerations. It aims at making only adequate and correct statements about populations objects. The result obtained are probabilistic predictions, and it helps in formulating most general axioms or what can be termed as scientific theories. Scientific method is a combination of objective, logical, and systematic method. That is, a method free from personal bias, a method to show qualities of a phenomenon capable of being verified, a method wherein the researcher is supported by the rules of logical reasoning, a method wherein the investigation moves in an orderly manner, and a method that implies internal consistency. There are other types of researches also, such as historical research. It is which utilizes historical sources like documents, remains, etc., to study events or ideas of the past, including the philosophy of person and groups at any remote point of time. Second one is field setting or laboratory research or stimulation research. The research is carried out in field, it is called field research, or research carried out in laboratory, it is a laboratory research. Depending upon the environment, it just has to be carried out. Clinical or diagnostic research. Such researches follow case study methods or in-depth approach to reach the basic causal relations. Such studies usually do deep into the causes of things or events that interest us, using very small samples and very deep probing data gathering devices. One time research or longitudinal research. Research confined to single time period is called one time research. Research is carried out on over several period of time is known as longitudinal research. Social research, it refers to research conducted by social scientists. It is the scientific investigation conducted in the field of social sciences and also in the behavioral sciences. The research is a systematic method of exploring, analyzing, and conceptualizing social life in order to expand, correct, or verify knowledge. Social research methods can generally vary along a quantitative or qualitative dimension. Next one is educational research. It is an activity which is directed towards development of a science of behavior in educational situations. This method in which individuals evaluate different aspects of education, including students' learning, teaching methods, teacher training, and classroom dynamics, and so on. Qualitative and quantitative methods. The word qualitative refers to methods that generate data, that is verbal, without numbers, whereas quantitative refers to the data pertaining to numbers. In general practice, it is difficult to identify which method is qualitative and which one is quantitative method. Qualitative research is confined as a market research method that focuses on obtaining data through open-ended and conversational communication. This method is not only about what people think, but also why they think. For example, we consider a convenience store that is looking to improve its patronage. A systematic observation concludes that the number of women visiting these stores are more. One good method to determine why men were not visiting the store is to conduct an in-depth interview of potential customers in the category. Qualitative research is based on the disciplines of social sciences like psychology, sociology, and anthropology. Therefore, qualitative research method allows for in-depth and further probing and questioning of respondents based on their responses, where the interviewer or the researcher also tries to understand their motivation and feelings. Qualitative research methods are designed in a manner that help reveal the behavior and perception of a target audience, which reference to a particular topic. There are different types of qualitative research methods, like an in depth interview, focus groups, ethnographic research, content analysis, case study research that are usually used. Qualitative research methods originated in the social and behavioral sciences. Today, our world is more complicated and it's difficult to understand what people think and what they perceive. What are the features of qualitative research methods? This method generally collects data at the site where the participants are experiencing issues or problems. The data collected is a real-time data and the participants are not bought out of the geographical locations. To collect multiple form of data, such as observations, interviews, and documents, and does not depend on the single source of information. This helps in solving complex issues by breaking down into meaningful inferences, which is easily understood by all. As the method is more communicative, researcher builds a trust among the people, and the information so obtained is original in nature. Now, when to use qualitative research? Qualitative research techniques are used by researchers when they want to collect accurate and in-depth situations. It helps in collecting factual data. Some areas where this is helpful in using, for example, developing a new product or generating an idea. To understand your strengths and weaknesses, understanding purchase behavior, studying the product, brand, or service to strengthen the marketing strategy, gathering perception data of a brand, company, or a product, or exploring market demographics, segments, and customer groups. Qualitative research method versus quantitative research methods. The basic difference between quantitative research methods and qualitative research methods are simple and straightforward. The difference, the type of questions asked, their analytical objectives, forms of data they produce, types of data collection instruments, and the degree of flexibility. Now, this table depicts the basic relation between qualitative research methods and quantitative research methods. Now, the basic comparison starts with what type of questions are asked. In qualitative, it is open-ended questions, whereas in quantitative, it is closed-ended questions. Second one is data collection. It is done through in-depth interviews, focus groups, and participants observation, semi-structured methods, whereas in quantitative research methods, structured observation using questionnaire and surveys, which is highly structured method. Analytical objectives is this qualitative research methods focuses on describing the individual experiences and belief, whereas in quantitative, it is related to the characteristic of a population. In qualitative research methods, descriptive data is generated, and whereas in quantitative research methods, numerical data is generated. The last part is what is the degree of flexibility. In qualitative research methods, responses affect which and how the questions are asked by the researchers. Whereas in quantitative, there is no such effect how the questions are asked by the researcher. Advantages and disadvantages of qualitative research methods. Qualitative research is not part of a statistical analysis. This is the reason that the result cannot be tested to see if they are strategically significant or statistically significant. Further to this, findings can be extended to a wider population. We cannot say that this method is of no use. We talk about the advantages. It is useful in finding out More about complex situations. Data is based on participants' view of the world rather than a world created by a researcher. It can be used to figure out how people interpret constructs like IQ or fear, which can be hard to quantify. The study focuses can be shifted to the middle of research if necessary. In a traditional lab test setting, this would usually null and void the experiment. All important cases can be used to vividly paint a picture in a report. The disadvantages of qualitative research in general has lower credibility than quantitative research. This may make it more difficult to get your results published. Data collection takes a lot longer than in a traditional lab setting. Predictions of future events are usually impossible to quantify. Now, we move to research designs, that is your unit 3. Research design refers to a researcher's roadmap, which they decide to follow during their research journey to find their research questions answered and validate accurately, economically, and objectively as possible. The research design process allows the researcher and writes to follow the instructions of their research work. It tells the researcher what and how a distinctive method could be applied in different phases of the research. By making a research design plan, researchers are ready to decide and even ready to communicate with others or themselves about their decisions regarding the proposed study design. Research design means an overall framework or plan for activities to be undertaken during the course of a research study. When particular research area has been defined, research problem is defined, and the related literature in the areas has been reviewed. The next step is to construct the research design. It is a fundamental to the success of any scientific research. It involves decisions regarding what, where, when, how much, and by what means concerning a research study. It constitutes a blueprint for the collection, measurement, and analysis of data. It serves as a framework for the study, guiding the collection and analysis of data, research instrument to be utilized, and the sampling plan to be followed. According to Carlinger, research design is a plan, structure, and strategy of investigation conceived so as to obtain answers to research questions and to control variance. According to another concept is according to Kinner and Taylor, a research design is the basic plan which guides the data collection and analyze phase of the research project. It is a framework which specifies the type of information to be collected, the source of data, and the data collection procedure. As such, the design includes an outline of what the researcher will do from writing the hypothesis and its operational implications to final analysis of data. More explicitly, the design decisions happen to be in respect of what is the study about, why the study is being made, where will the study be carried out, what type of data is required, where can the required data are found, what period of time will the study include, what will be the sample design, what technique of data collection will be used. These are the basic things which are required for this designing of decisions. Function and goals of research design. Research design is needed because it facilitates the smooth sailing of various research operations, thereby making research as efficient as possible. yielding maximum information with minimum expenditure of effort, time, and money. Research design stands for advanced planning of the methods to be adopted for collecting the relevant data and the techniques to be used in further analysis, keeping in view the objective of the research and the availability of the staff, time, and money. Preparation of research design should be done with great care as any error in it may upset the entire project. Research design, in fact, has a great bearing on the reliability of the result arrived at, and as such constitutes the firm foundation of the entire edifice of the research work. In brief, research design must at least contain number one, a clear statement of the research problem. Number two, procedure and techniques to be used for gathering information. Number three, the population to be studied. And fourth one is methods to be used in processing and analyzing data. What are the characteristics of a good design? From what has been stated above, we can state the important features of research design as it is a plan that specifies the sources and the type of information relevant to the research problem. Number two, it is a strategy specifying which approach will be used for gathering and analyzing the data. Thirdly, it also includes the time and cost budgets, since most studies are done under these two constraints. Different type of research design. Different research designs can be conveniently described if we categorize them as research design in the case of exploratory research studies. Number two, research design in the case of descriptive and diagnostic research studies. Number three, research designs in the cases of experimental research design. What is exploratory research design? Exploratory research designs are also termed as formulative research studies. The main purpose of such studies is that of formulating a problem for more precise investigation or of developing the working hypothesis from an operational point of view. The major emphasis in such studies is on the discovery of ideas and insights. Exploration is suitable in cases where research have no clear idea about upcoming problems they have met during the study. Techniques used for exploration while researching something with little information may appear challenging. Various approaches may assist a researcher in determining the optimum study design, data gathering methods, and subject selection. There are two methods for conducting research, primary and secondary. Once researchers know the scope of qualitative research, they can easily adapt various approaches for exploratory investigation. Some approaches which are normally used by researchers, such as researchers use depth interview techniques, mainly in an unstructured way. Participants observation, which participants will do under the specific study setting. Researchers capturing, that is through audio, video, picture format. The group living lifestyles considered current study. Case study techniques are used to understand a few conditions or events in depth. Document analysis. Lastly, it is an expert interview is performed to retrieve important or in-depth subject information study. What are the characteristics of exploratory research designs? Exploratory research based study is commonly unstructured, open ended, high time consuming, and interactive in nature because researchers have to collect all available information related to a particular study. Researchers do the study commonly to know the answer of what contains base questions. For example, what is the proposed problem of the study? Researchers will do exploratory research methods specific to a proposed study area. When there is a less existence of prior research as well as existing study not enough to answer the problem precisely. Descriptive research design are those studies which are concerned with describing the characteristic of a particular individual or a group. Most of the social research comes under this category. Studies concerned with specific predictions, with narration of facts and characteristics concerning individual, group or situation are all examples of descriptive research studies. The researcher must be able to find clearly what he wants to measure and must find adequate methods for measuring it, along with a clear cut definition of population he wants to study. The research design must make enough provision for protection against bias and must maximize reliability with due concern for the economical completion of the research study. The design in each study must be rigid and not flexible and must focus attention on the following: formulating the objectives of the study, that is what the study is about and why it is being made. Number two is designing the method of data collection. What technique of gathering data will be adopted? Third one is selecting the sample. How much material will be needed? The fourth one is collecting the data. Where can the required data be found and in what time period the data should be related to? Experimental research design. Experimental studies are those where the researchers test the hypothesis of causal relationship between variables. Such studies require procedures that will not only reduce bias and increase reliability, but will permit drawing inferences about causality. Usually, experiments meet this requirement. Hence, when we talk of research design in such studies, we often mean the design of experiments. Today, the experimental designs are being used in research relating to phenomena of several disciplines. Experiments are much more effective than descriptive techniques in establishing the causal relationship. First, the unit to be studied are selected by the research and each unit is assigned to the group determined by the researcher. The unit do not select their groups, thus avoiding the self-selection bias. Second one is unnecessary consequences of the first. The researcher administers the predetermined treatment or treatments to the unit within each group. A major contribution that the statisticians have made to the experimental design is the development of randomization concept, which enables the researcher to reduce the effect of the uncontrolled variables on comparative measure of response to the variables that are under experimental control. Randomization is a useful device for ensuring, on the average, that uncontrolled variables do not favor one treatment versus the other. To establish a causal effect relationship or to measure one variable's effect, independent variables on the other variables, that is, dependent variables, we need to control other factors or variables because it might be possible that Other factors also influence dependent variables. However, it might be hard to control other covariates factors that may directly or indirectly manipulate the causal relation, especially in dynamic environmental setting due to its non-static or naturally flow event characteristics. Now, the types of experimental design, that is quasi and true experimental design. Some studies expose an experimental group to the treatment and measures its effect. Such an experimental design is the weakest of all designs, and it does not measure the true cause and effect relationship. This is so because there is no comparison between groups nor any recording of the status of the dependent variables as it was prior to the experimental treatment and changed the how it changed after the treatment. In the absence of such control, the study is of no significance value in determining cause and effect relationship. Hence, such a design is referred to as quasi-experimental design. The true experimental design, which includes both the treatment and the control groups, and record information both before and after the experimental group is exposed to the treatment, are known as ex post facto experimental designs. Simulation. An alternative to lab and field experimentation currently being used in business research is simulation. Simulation uses a model building technique to determine the effect of changes, and computer based simulations are becoming popular in business research. A simulation can be thought of as an experiment conducted in a specially created setting that very closely represents the natural environment in which activities are usually carried out. In that sense, the simulation lies somewhere between a lab and a field experiment, insofar as the environment are artificially created but not far different from the reality. If managerial behavior as a function of a specific treatment is to be studied, subjects will be asked to operate in an environment very much like an office with desks, chairs, cabinets, telephones, and other office work stationery. Members will be randomly assigned the roles of directors, managers, clerks, and so on, and specific stimuli will be presented to them. Thus, while the researcher would retain control over the assignment and manipulation, the subject would be left free to operate as a real office. In a sense, some factors will be built into and incorporated in the stimulated system, and others left free to vary, that is, participants' behavior within the rules of the game. Data on the dependent variables can be obtained through observation, videotaping, audio recording, interviews, or questionnaires. Now, what is decision on experimental design? Before using experimental design in research studies, it is essential to consider whether they are necessary at all, and if so, at what level of sophistication. This is because experimental designs call for a special effort and varying degree of interference with the natural flow of activities. Some questions that need to be addressed in making these decisions are: number one, it is generally necessary to identify causal relationship, or would it be suffice if the correlates that account for the variance in the dependent variables were known? If it is important to trace the causal relationship, which of the two, internal validity or external validity, is needed more, or both are needed? Is cost an important factor in the study? If so, would a less rather than more sophisticated experimental design do? Though managers may not often be interested in cause and effect relationship, a good knowledge of experimental design could foster some pilot studies to be undertaken to examine if factors such as bonus system, peace rates, responses, and so on lead to positive outcomes such as better motivation, improved job performance, and other favorable working conditions at the workplace. Marketing managers would be able to use experimental design to study the effect on sales of advertisement, sales promotion, pricing, and the like. Awareness of the usefulness of simulation as a research tool can also result in creative research endeavors in the management area, as it currently does in the manufacturing side of the business. Now, we move to block two, which is related to data collection and measurement. We have three units in that, that is methods and technique of data collection, attitude, measurement and scales, and questionnaire design. We will start with methods and technique of data collection. Neither a business decision nor a government decision can be made in a casual manner in the highly motivated environment prevailing in this age. It is through appropriate data and their analysis that the decision maker becomes equipped with proper tool of decision making. Now, data can be classified as primary data and secondary data. The primary data are those which are collected afresh and for the first time, and thus happens to be original in character. Such data are published by authorities who themselves are responsible for their collection. Whereas the secondary data, on the other hand, are those which have already been collected by some other agency and which have already been processed. Generally speaking, secondary data are the information which have previously been collected by some organization to satisfy their own need, but it is being used by the department under reference for an entirely different reason. Even when an organization is interested to collect primary data, it is necessary to take help of various studies of secondary data to design a proper sampling scheme. What are the methods of collecting primary data? The collection of primary data for business research is of paramount importance to assist management in making decisions. Generally, information regarding a large number of characteristics are necessary to analyze any problem pertaining to management. For example, a study related to employment in rural areas requires data on income, wages, types of crops, and land holdings. The collection of primary data thus requires a great deal of deliberation and expertise. What are the methods of collecting primary data? First one, observation method. The investigator collects the requisite information personally through observation. For example, in order to study the conditions of students residing in a university, the investigator meets the student in their hostels and collect necessary data after a personal study. As the investigator is solely responsible for collection of data by this method, his training skills and knowledge play an important role in the quality of primary data collection. A slight variation of this procedure is indirect, that is oral investigation, where data are collected through indirect sources. Persons who are likely to have information about the problem are interrogated, and on the basis of their answers, primary data becomes available. Most of the commissions of inquiry or committees appointed by government collect primary data by this method. The accuracy of the primary data collected by this method depends largely upon the type of persons interviewed, and hence these persons have to be selected very carefully. Second method is questionnaire method. A popular and common method of collection of primary data is by personally interviewing individuals, recording their answers in a structured questionnaire. The enumerators visit the dwelling of individuals and put questions to them, which elicits the relevant information about the subject of inquiry. This information is recorded in the questionnaire. Occasionally, a part of the questionnaire is unstructured so that the interviewee can feel free to share information about inmate matters in the interview. Much of the accuracy of the collected data, however, depends on the ability and tactfulness of investigation. Who should be studied to special training as how they should elect the correct information through friendly discussions. Third one is mailed questionnaire method. A set of questions relevant to study of inquiry are mailed to a selected list of persons with a request to return them duly filled in. Supplementary instructions regarding the definition of terms used and the methods of filling up the forms should also accompany the questionnaire. That is a covering letter. The method of collecting data by mailing the questionnaire to the respondent is most extensively employed in various business and economic surveys. This method saves both time and cost and can cover a large area. The absence of an investigator, however, renders the response less reliable. The method also suffers from a large degree of non response. Telephone interview. This method of collecting information consists in contacting respondents on telephone itself. This method is inexpensive but limited in scope as respondent must possess a telephone. The telephone interview method is used in industrial surveys, especially in developed regions. Now, a comparison between principal methods of data collection. We have talked about three methods: personal interview, questionnaire, mail questionnaire, telephone interview. So, what we have said, they have basically a different area, different field, different application, and different method of data collection. Since everything has advantages, so that means they all have disadvantages also. Now, how to design a questionnaire? A questionnaire is a performer containing a sequence of questions to elect information from the interviews. The questionnaire is used for personal interview. The questionnaire is the heart of primary data collection technique. Hence, its drafting requires utmost skill. The question must be clear, simple, and to the point. They must be well organized from the point of the view of respondent and be formulated in such a manner as to provide the data is so far as possible in the desired form. That means information has to be in a chronological order. A questionnaire may be said to possess three aspects: the general form, the question sequence, and the question wording. As far as the general form is concerned, this form of questionnaire will depend partly on the type of data being sought and partly on the data collection method to be used. The choice lies between the two extremes. One on the one hand, there is slightly structured questionnaire in which all questions and answers are specified and continents in the respondent's own word are held in minimum. At the other end, it is an unstructured questionnaire in which the interviewer is provided with general brief on the sort of information to be obtained, But the exact question is largely his own responsibility. Question sequence. The introduction to the questionnaire should be as short, as simple as possible. The introductory letter accompanying the mail questionnaire should be made very brief. The introduction lays the foundation of the establishing the rapport with the respondent. Once the rapport is established, the questions will generally seek substantive information of value to the study. As a general rule, questions that put great strain on the memory or the intellect should be reserved for later stages. Ideally, the question sequence should conform to the respondent's way of thinking, and which is very unstructured interviews are highly advantageous. Question wording, framing of questions, and how the questions are framed. It has been stated that the question's wording and formulation are more an art than a science. Science does enter. However, in testing the stability and the adequacy of replies for business and management decisions, the wording of the question should be impartial so as not to give a biased picture to the true state of affairs. In general, the questions should be worded such that they are easily understood, they are simple, they are concrete, and conform to the respondent's way of thinking. Pre-testing a questionnaire. The pre-test is a valuable indicator of the effectiveness of a questionnaire to collect data. The pre-testing of questionnaire consists of selecting, approaching, and interviewing a small segment in the same manner to be followed in full-scale operations and then analyzing the result in the light of the objectives of the study. Results obtained in a pre-test can at times suggest new ideas or hypotheses worthy of using examination. Editing of primary data. Editing involves reviewing the data collected by investigators to ensure maximum accuracy and ambiguity. It should be done as soon as possible after data has been collected. If the size of the data is relevantly small, it is desirable that only one person edits all the data for the entire study. And the different steps involved for editing are checking legibility, checking completeness, and checking consistency. Techniques of interview. The general qualities that an interviewer should possess can be identified as extroversion, impartiality to different point of views, friendliness without getting personal, ability to remain calm under many different circumstances, consistentness, perseverance, accuracy of reporting, and adaptability. In addition, the interviewer must plan in advance and should fully know the problem under consideration. He must choose a suitable time and place so that the interview may feel at ease during the interview. If the language of the questionnaire is English, translation in the regional language must be available so that the interviewer has no ambiguity about the questions. The selection, training, and supervision of the interviewers are very important administrative functions for collecting of reliable data. Now, collection of secondary data. Secondary data are data which has been collected and analyzed by some other agency. The sources of secondary data could be various publications of central, state, and local governments. The important official publications are Statistical Abstract, India Annual, Monthly Abstract of Statistics, both published by Central Statistical Organization. Indian Agriculture Statistics, which is annual in nature and which is published by Ministry of Food and Agriculture. Second one is various publications of foreign governments or of international bodies. The important publications are publications of international bodies like UNO, FAO, WHO, UNESCO, ILO, Statistical Yearbook, which is published by Statistical Office of United Nations, and Yearbook of Labor Statistics, which is published by International Labour Organization, Geneva. Journal of Trade, Commerce, Economics, Engineering, etc., published by Responsible Trade Associations. Chambers of Commerce provide secondary data in respect of some important items. Some examples of this kind of publications are Annual Report of the Chief Inspector of Mines in India. The other sources of secondary data are book, magazines, and newspapers, reports prepared by various universities, historical documents, diaries, letters, unpublished biographies, and autobiographies. With this, we will be concluding today's session and we will be continuing further with data collection in our next session.